interacting. And I would I'll use the opportunity now to move on to the open forum. For those who are in the panel wish to stay on, I think we can continue a discussion like this if we wish. I'd also like to invite my directors, the TTMAG directors to join us in the open forum as we field questions and comments from the wider group now. I think the floor is open. So open forum time, I know it's 12:45 during lunch, but let's see if we can find some common ground, some thought processes in the open forum. So I'll ask my colleagues from TTMAG to join as we take questions and comments in our open forum going forward. So to do this, I would suggest you raise your hand and one of us will call upon you to jump in and make your comment and make your intervention and probably respond if there are questions. So with that, open forum has begun. But don't all jump in at once, though.
I do have a question, like kind of for everybody, not as much for my co-panelists. But like I think that there's a lot of conversation that's happening inside of the chat around like what everybody thinks like the answer to the big problem is, right? And I think that like there's a lot of like joining around like agreed points, you know, like government needs to overhaul their shit. We need a better payment gateway. Like there's a bunch of those things, right? But like, what do you guys feel is a good like way to get that like moving? I suppose at the infrastructure level, like we can't firebomb the Red House. So like where on the scale of like action do you think is the necessary way forward with this type of thing? That's I think that's the most important question, I think, because I think that I can have good ideas and Karan and Camille and Roxanne and all of them can have good ideas. All of us can have good ideas as well. But I'm really concerned about this conversation moving from, or I'm interested in this conversation moving from us basically in chorus agreeing with each other over and over and moving towards us kind of like talking to whoever needs to be spoken to, because I feel like a lot of the answers that would have been suggested by the other people on this panel, for example, were all exceptionally good things. It's not new, but it's all exceptionally good things. And I think that we're at a place now where we have a huger case for digital moving forward than we did, for example, in 2019. But I guess I kind of want to know what you guys think we should do, because, you know, we can't firebomb them, like I said, but we have to figure something out.
Yeah, I think we're all in violent agreement about getting things forward. Anybody wants to take that up in terms of response? And I think one of the ways, I think we just created an approach that we can take concrete action. Let's document this somehow and move it forward, whether it be pushing it through the TTMAG, through the government as an advisory body, certainly moving it forward to our other stakeholders, the chambers of commerce and so on. That's one way of taking it forward, but I would leave my other colleagues in TTMAG to respond to how we can take this forward. And again, please feel free to jump in. I think I saw Deirdre's hand up. I don't know where it's gone, but colleagues in TTMAG, let's see if we can respond to this. Please go ahead. It's all my colleagues in TTMAG are watching each other, it seems, virtually. Deirdre has a hand up, so without having, there's no there. So let Deirdre. Deirdre, can you go ahead? I think you can unmute yourself and proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can, Deirdre.
Okay, because I'm using the laptop microphone. I'm always concerned about the way we forget so easily the level of dependency on electricity and internet connections and our vulnerability because of where we live. And I wondered if anyone had anything to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deirdre. So we have a comment on the prioritization of digital over something as basic as or as fundamental as. Deirdre is actually from St. Lucia, for those who don't know who Deirdre is. So we have international and regional participation. Everyone wants to take a stab at that intervention from Deirdre, who she's made this several times before, and I think it's always been a perplexing question about in countries that are challenged with outages. In Tobago, for example, there was an island-wide outage just, I think, 2 days ago. the internet dies in that scenario. How do we deal with basic infrastructure issues that, from the government standpoint, I know they always say, well, we have to take care of the roads and the water and the lights first before we take on digital. That's what some people tell you. I would respond and say it's a parallel thing, so it's not necessarily one over the other. But anybody wants to take a stab at responding to Deirdre's concern as well as Jay's observations earlier? And again,
Yeah, I'd like to
yes,
take a try there.
go ahead.
Actually, I'll share some of our experiences with what we have been doing since the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of the education system. One of the things that I noticed that was happening in that some of the rush to give out devices, many of the considerations probably would have been set by technical people and not necessarily education people, because what we saw is that there were a lot of devices that met minimum internet connection requirements, but it did not meet in any way optimize education requirements. And so why I'm saying that is that many of the devices were dependent on Wi-Fi connections, right? But what really and truly we needed was devices, especially for remote areas, with that mobile connectivity as well, with the SIM cards and so forth. So what I did, I designed something for that. And when we went out and through the many corporate sponsors that sponsored the device that I could say kind of put together, invented, inverted commas, we went out to the rural areas. The principals made it quite clear as well that these were realities that some of the parents and students didn't even have electricity. So it is a reality even here in Trinidad in some of the areas that we went. And to get over that for the education purposes, what they did, the schools open up their resources for those people who lacked that type of basic necessities, and they came into the school. But the point is, it is definitely something for us in the Caribbean that we have to look at when we look at leveling the playing field and making that option available to all. We definitely have to keep those things in mind and not just give out technology, but of course, things that are actually practical to use. Thank you.
All right, I'm just waiting for my colleague TT Mark folks to jump in, and I'm still seeing everybody watching each other virtually. So,
all right, this is Steve Anand here. So
yes, thanks, Dev.
I'll try to answer that. I mean, it's a tough. Data is a tough issue. I mean, having to work at schools. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I had to had to work on schools where they didn't even have a water infrastructure. So there's no sewage even, or all these things. So you have to build treatment systems and all this type of stuff. So it's a real challenge. I mean, you're looking at things like energy efficiency, which is now coming into play, which reduces the electrical requirements, LED lighting, those types of things, new equipment, and so forth. But I think one of the challenges also in terms of internet connectivity, and which frustrates me to some extent, is that there's so many areas of Trinidad and Tobago that don't have internet access, and it's a frustration to get internet access. And I just sometimes wish that when government does infrastructure, they treat bandwidth as an infrastructure issue, and just build it alongside with when so that, for example, when when you're building the roads, build the ducting one time to pull in those fiber optic cables and so forth, so that in the future it'll be easier to do, rather than do one thing first, then wait, then somebody else comes in, then somebody else digs over, breaks the road and digs up again, and so on and so on. So a better coordination, and yeah, and obviously what was the not better intelligence, but better awareness of where our gaps in infrastructure lie, so that we can then say, okay, and then presumably the government can then coordinate, okay, let's take this area, that area, that type of thing.
Yeah, Dev, and I think that's an important point you raised, and just segueing with what Deirdre had raised about the infrastructure such as electricity and water, whatever else. Um,
I didn't say
it-
water.
the challenge, no, I'm saying water because Trinidad and Tobago has a water problem. So I'm talking about the large infrastructural issues that are prioritized over digital, to be honest. So there's from a government standpoint, there's always this prioritization level in terms of using universal service to bring connectivity to underserved area. Sometimes you go to the area and the area doesn't want internet because they don't have water, or they don't have lights, or they don't have basic services, things like that. What does bug me is, and I agree with Dev, is that when you deal with underserved areas, it appears that from the standpoint of the agencies who are responsible for providing these services, there's a perception that the area already has this infrastructure, which is kind of weird. So whether it be internet connectivity, you talk to the ISPs, they seem to be shocked when you point out to them that they don't have access in this particular area. But they do, because X, Y, and Z, we have mobile, or we have some other type of service that is getting there. But you can see, like, going into the pockets, and the pockets have people live there. There's no access. And it stretches across all infrastructure, even down to roads. It's a pervasive issue within, I think, the infrastructure providers, that there seems to be this perception of once you reach a certain point, whether it be the closest town, the closest main population hub, that's it, we're done, and all the elements of electricity, water, roads, internet get sort of pushed to the background, and government services, as an example. And that's something we need to fix. I don't know if it's a Caribbean problem or if it's a global problem. I do know it's a problem in the Pacific Islands, because that came up several times. It may be a problem in Africa, even highly exacerbated there, for example, because of the nature of what the African continent is. But these are real pervasive problems that I think are difficult to deal with, because the perceptions of the individuals, we talked earlier about those who are in positions who are experienced but not necessarily have the expertise, and that's the same thing here. To fix these issues, we need to this is one of those talk shop things. We put something in place, but we need to really take a close look at what's going on at infrastructure level, to address the electricity problem, to address the issues that other that underserved communities face, connectivity-wise, water, roads, services-wise, and really get to deal with that. Because if we don't deal with it, we're going to leave many people behind, whether we leave them behind just in terms of basic infrastructure and or the internet. And I think that's highly that's something we need to deal with without, but now we can't put that aside. So that's my take. Anybody else would like to join in on this or raise another observation on the open forum? Deirdre, I know I brought water and other things in, but you see my point. I'm trying to raise the broader issue, why electricity is problematic for many people in the region.
I see your point exactly, and I hope people noticed this is a problem in the United States, in Europe, in all the countries that think they're big and bad and superior to us. They have these problems too, and they forget about them.
Exactly, yes, and the forgotten population is really problematic. Nicole Hendrickson has a hand up. Nicole, you wanted to have an intervention?
Yeah, I just was wondering if we then could have had synergies with other industries, so like the natural resource, so like maybe solar energy. I know we said water was a problem, but we could also synergize with other industries to solve some of these problems.
That's a good point. I don't know Sanjay's online, but Sanjay, for example, has been very in the forefront promoting alternative energy, renewable energy thinking. Sanjay, are you there? If you're there, maybe you can jump in. If not, anybody else wants to jump in on that discussion on what can we do to really synergize with other initiatives that are happening in the green and blue economy, for example, because at the end of the day, these alternative ways of doing things are really important for us as a country and trying to big on as a region, and as Deirdre says, as the globe, to turn things around into where we are and to where we need to be. So I don't think Sanjay is maybe here. So anybody else wants to jump in and respond to that,
Tracy,
Nicole's point?
Ajmal, I could take
Yes.
a shot at that.
Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, so I was just thinking, if it's just a case of getting internet access or Wi-Fi at these locations that don't have electricity, then solar would be the most competitive or the obvious choice. Wi-Fi devices normally take extremely low power, so you won't need to invest a huge amount in a solar panel. And also considering schools are going to be open during the day, so you don't really need to invest in a large amount of battery banks either to store the electricity. So, and this is a common, either a problem or a solution. There's Wi-Fi devices out there, complete solutions that have a solar panel built in with as part of the solution, and those can be deployed.
Anyone else? Thanks, Ash. Anyone else wants to jump in on this issue? Because I don't know if people are aware, but BP, which is one of our major energy service providers in Tobago, multinational, you may be aware they have also pivoted globally, but their pivot has already begun in Tobago, not only in terms of their resource reallocation, and let's use that word for the time being instead of the more terrifying word, but they've actually started two projects. They've won two projects to build solar parks in Tobago, and so they have begun that pivot. It appears that Tobago seems to be showing interest in alternative or renewable energy sources, which hopefully will lead to solving some of those problems that we face in terms of our electrification initiatives or our simply replacing stuff on the grid and making life a little easier for those people who are living in the outskirts. Anybody wants to jump in on what are the potential roles for this green economy in moving this forward? Yes, I'm seeing no one else wanting to jump in. So maybe Nicole, I don't know if that would have addressed some of your concerns, but from the open forum standpoint, I'm really hope that people who are, you're typing in the chat, but maybe you want to jump in and say something, feel free. This is the open forum. There's no panelists here. So we'll have dead air if we are not getting people to jump in and make the observations or points. Anyone else would like to jump in and make an observation or make a comment? Maybe my fellow TT Map members can probably fill the dead air space. Yes, Dev, go ahead.
All right, I'll try. But I mean, obviously, what Ajmal was saying, and you saying now, I mean, it's unfortunate that we had to be in a situation where oil and gas is no longer going to be the key foreign exchange earner in the coming years, and we have to now pivot at this late hour. But I guess better late than never. So indeed, I think with solar, and you're looking at renewable energies in terms of, as I say, some of the questions, as someone in the chat is saying about batteries and so forth, that could really revolutionize, and especially in those areas where infrastructure has not yet been built out. It can only help. So, it's just still early days yet.
So on that question of the green economy and how ICT can play a role, or the digital economy's intersection with the green economy, I have a few points I wanted to raise and see if people may want to address it. So In our first IGF 5 years ago, the question of e-waste came up. What's happening now is over the last 12 months, we are seeing a greater move towards one, device usage, two, data center growth, which obviously consumes power and consumes energy. Is there a role for the digital economy to take a look at what's going on with this increased use of tech, and what are the potential impacts of that? And I know that maybe TTCS, who is a TTMAC member, may want to jump in and talk about their refurbishment project. But one of the things I have found is that when this whole device issue came up in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know if it's the same in the region, when we talk about giving devices to students and others who are, who need to communicate and connect while we are all remote learning and remote working, it appeared that there was a huge rush for new devices, and getting tablets and cheap new devices. The concern I have with that thinking, obviously, is that what's going to happen when those devices reach end of life. We have a whole new cadre of people who are using devices, and as you know, tablets are not easily refurbished. What's going to happen with that wave of millions of devices that came online in the last 12 months? What's going to happen with that in our countries in the region? What are we going to do about it? Maybe I could hand to Dev, who I'm just going to throw Dev because only he and I are speaking now. So maybe to respond in terms of refurbishment, but please do jump in with your thoughts on this issue of the intersection between the digital economy and the green economy. Dev?
It's a serious issue because, and you're right, I'm just shuddering to think what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 3 years when the devices conk out, screen breaks, it's no longer working. Toss into the garbage bin and buy a new device. And to me, it's not. I think we have to really work, and I think we have to really work to get it involved with the Caribbean side of things. I don't think one country alone is going to help it. We need to pool our resources together to really be able to figure out a way of how do we deal with this e-waste issue in terms of breaking it down to components and so forth. And in terms of for all the computers, the bigger desktop computers, laptops, the Computer Society has been doing a refurbishment project. And we've done about 250 computers that would have normally been either sitting idle or just tossed away, are not being used at all. And for minimal cost, I would say minimal cost, literally about 40 US per device spent in terms of upgrading it to work with the latest operating systems and so forth. So to me, refurbishment is probably a very useful thing, and I'm surprised it didn't really happen in a big way when COVID hit and there was a scramble for devices and so forth. There wasn't really a more sustained effort in trying to refurbish it, other than until we started doing our own thing there. So yeah, that's one. So those are the two things. I'll stop and see if anybody else has any other comments.
I'm gonna throw the other Dev on the spot here, Dev G, as a educator in a large. For those who don't know, Dev G is an educator in a very large, prestigious school in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you have any thoughts on this issue of whether refurbished devices should play a role as opposed to getting new devices and promoting this, this take-up of digital education? Because there seems to be a view that there's sort of a hierarchy. So a new device is better than a refurbished device, or whatever the thinking is. So even when you approach the private sector, there was this hesitance. Even colleagues who I was promoting this refurbishment project to, they prefer to get a tablet. They say, well, a tablet's easier, or a tablet's better. Your thoughts on that? And I think I saw Shiva also, yes, wanted to jump in. So Dev G, maybe a quick response from you, and then Shiva can jump in. Dev G, you're mute. Yeah.
Right. Yes, thanks very much again, and good afternoon again, everyone. Yeah, it is a very, very interesting question. And I think it's two questions you asked there. First, in terms of e-waste, there should be, or there should be a way later on for us to reuse. Now, the thing about it is that, while it may not be our primary device, okay, I had mentioned earlier in the earlier presentation that, if the camera is working, then maybe we could still use it. We could repurpose the device. And, meaning that we could use it for, probably use it as a security system in your own home. Add it because you'll have Wi-Fi, just simply add another camera to a room or your front door, whatever it is. So repurposing the device is one of the options rather than, tossing it in the bin. And like my brother in Titimag, the other dev, at the institution that I'm at, we actually have a program where we have actually I think we probably refurbished about the same number of computers as the DCS. And I remember looking at the operation, and one particular day that we restored about 40 computers. We asked the students to bring them in, and we restored them and we gave them out to homes and stuff like that. So yes, there is an option of like I said, restoring the device and whatnot. But then again, and I think you alluded to it earlier on, there was a mad rush to buy devices. And there was a certain device that was being purchased, and I saw a particular color box. And I asked myself whether these devices were really fit for purpose. Because of the fact that, number one, unless you do not go in there and have some tech knowledge and use the Apple system, jailbreak the system, you ain't going to get your apps running, So some of those devices, actually, we may not have to wait 2-3 years for them to become obsolete. They might, by their inherent design, have made themselves obsolete. So, one of the things that we have to look at is finding ways of repurposing some of these devices. It may not be able to do everything that you wanted to do at a given point in time, but you will find applications to run these devices. Take it away there, Pandit.
Thank you very much. Right. So I don't know if Devanan would remember 20 years ago when we started that computers in school project, right? When we had the Millennium Bug and a lot of companies were getting rid of their servers and their machines. What we did through the University of the West Indies, we took some of those things and we refurbished them for use in the primary school. In the primary school, we did a lab there with the servers and so on. And so that refurbishment, I know the Trinidad and Tobago Computer Society has always been involved in doing such projects. And I took it a little further 10 years ago. I don't know if Mr. Sami Vijay is still here, but he remembered that a panel from the government came to see a project that I did where I took thin client technology. So what the main use of that, I was looking at reducing the cost for a school in terms of maintenance, because these technologies had no moving parts, and it had no and they could be upgraded very easily when you just upgrade the server instead of every machine for each child. And also it minimized the amount of electricity that was needed. So that model was actually took, and the design was rolled out to many schools in Trinidad and Tobago. However, that is more than 10 years now, and none of those have been commissioned. None of those labs have been commissioned in the schools as yet, right, from that model that I designed back then. And in terms of now with COVID-19, one of the first reactions that we had, I wouldn't call any names, but a very large hotel dumped off their old machines on some organizations, and ICT experts, my company happened to be one of them, that received some of these old machines because they did a complete overhaul of their technology at the hotel. And one of the immediate things I did is that we refurbished those machines and we gave it out, to some schools that and children that didn't have anything. And And so the process continues. So the whole idea of repurposing and reusing, we as the small people, we're trying to do as much as we can, and we hope that we can influence others to do likewise, because we had a lot of corporate people as well that had laptops that they weren't using, and they also gave us some refurbished those, and we handed out. And Dev, who mentioned well, we wouldn't call it color, right, Dev? The bright color box that you see being shared out all over the place. And yes, you have to hack those systems to actually even make them usable in terms of getting the apps and so on that the children need to use. That's what I mentioned before, that maybe it's technical people advising and not educational people advising in terms of the requirements needed for these devices, right? And these really, and I know of many cases where those devices are being returned because they are not functioning, or their space is full up too fast, or the connectivity is an issue. Many issues with those cheaper devices that many people would have run to in terms of supplying. Yeah, so I think we could continue the conversation.
Yeah, I certainly see the conversation heading towards this right to repair and so on. Karen, I know you wanted to say something, but Deirdre had a hand up first, so perhaps Deirdre, you could jump in, and then Karen afterwards. Thanks for jumping in as well. Deirdre, you're still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah.
At the moment, slimness seems to be all in devices. Because slimness is all, you cannot replace the battery. That was brought to my attention sometime during this month. I took one of my things in to see if they had a new battery for it. Now, if it's something that you need to move around with, it's no use if the battery no longer takes a charge and you cannot replace the battery. I have my dear faithful BlackBerry, which still works like a charm, which has its batteries will recharge. I can still actually get new batteries for it. But the problem with the battery, with the BlackBerry, is the software. And surely that's a problem that can be fixed. But to make devices where you cannot replace the battery is immoral these days. And we should all say no loudly. Thank you.
Karen? Thank you, Deirdre. Karen, still there? Yes.
Yes.
Karen.
So I wanted to chime into that and then pose a question to everybody to kind of shift the convo. But so part of what I do with Droid Island is smartphone education. And I've been working in telecoms for probably over 10 years and worked at Apple for quite a number of years as well. And recycling the devices has always been a big part of the telecommunications companies in Canada and also Apple as well. Because every company only gives you 2 years of software support. So even though you can refurbish a device and bring it up to, make it look good again, change the casing, change the screen if it is a bit banged up. The problem now is that every company only wants to give you 2 years of support. So purchasing a device older than 2 years is already a risk unless you are technically sound and you can hack the device to make sure that everything works. Because once a new version of the software comes out, there are hundreds of apps every single year that don't get upgraded for it to be able to even work on the latest version of iOS or on the latest version of Android. So most people who are not technically savvy, again, it's always going to be a risk at this point to purchase a device over 2 years old, whether it has been sitting on the shelf for 3 years and it's still brand new. It is a risk to even purchase that device. So that's an issue where even if we can refurbish it, the software side of it makes it really hard to even go down the road of refurbish. But again, as you had mentioned, a lot of the times it's technically people that are advising and not necessarily educational people. So that's still going to be a bit of a challenge, kind of no matter how we shape it. The question I want to pose is, because we're speaking digital, what is some of the apprehension that any of you face with going online? What stops you from, either wanting to learn a digital skill, putting yourself out there to build a brand and start tapping into the global economy? What is some of the apprehension that you guys face from going digital?
Deirdre, is that a new hand or is that an old hand, Deirdre?
Sorry, it was an old hand that I forgot about.
Okay, thanks. All right, so Karen has responded to the issue with regards to refurbishment, I guess, of mobile devices and the challenges that we have with that. And we've also heard a series of responses on the challenges with repairability of devices, of today's devices, whether they tablets, even the new, I saw in the chat the mention of the new M1 Max and what's going to happen with those. And we know the Apple ecosystem quite generally is resistant, let's just use that word, to repairability. Whether they're using it to recycle is a different issue, to repairability or to refurbishment. So we had some responses there. And Karen has also posed a new question about what challenges us as a community, as a population, with getting online and not just surfing the web and using Facebook or WhatsApp, whatever we're using. And that's an issue I've been bringing up several times, that digital literacy is not equal to social media. But what stops us from really utilizing the tools at our disposal to actually get up to speed, learn, become more competent in the digital space? There are countless free free learning programs out there. There are countless inexpensive programs, and we don't have to pay thousands of dollars to get a certificate in a particular program from any number of platforms. And of course, there's, as someone I saw in the chat said, University of YouTube, where quite literally, if you are savvy enough, you can find full courses free of charge. I was pointing out to my son a few months ago that there's this teacher who is quite literally going through CSEC IT courses online, paper by paper, and solving problems. That you can find anything on YouTube, quite literally. So what is preventing us from, and I don't mean the us in this chat necessarily, but maybe the collective us, the populations of our countries, and Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and other countries who are online, from simply utilizing the tools that are available to us and moving beyond the very basic searching and finding out stuff, or gossiping, or sorry, I'm using the word gossiping. Getting involved in social media at a certain level and going beyond where we are. Any thoughts on that? Throwing it out to everyone. Dev, I think Dev is jumping in. Yes,
Right.
Dev.
Yeah, okay. It's an interesting question, Karen and Tracy, for putting it in perspective. And I always like to preface this. If I were to ask you, I want you to tell me what you don't know. Do we really know what we don't know? So the question is, sometimes we need to, we need to look at it in a different way. And, Kevin is right. There's so much stuff out there that we could research and we could find and whatnot. But do we know what we need to search for? Do we know, is there something to guide us on how we bridge what we know with what we need to know? And I think, this is, while it may seem to be educated or to someone who knows how to get it done, we will always be in this little quagmire as to find out what exactly we need to know to get this specific task done. So, we need the Karens and we need the Tracys and we need the Pundit and we need, Rotary, we need various organizations to sometimes just hold our hand. I mean, Melissa gave a very interesting presentation. Just hold our hand and walk us through the process, which is what she attempted to do and whatnot. And while I'm talking about that particular project, I posted on the chat an email address, but I'll also, while the thing was going on, I designed a little form. If anybody needs assistance, you don't have to go through all the trials and tribulations that Melissa had gone through in getting her school online, okay? Our Rotary Club is doing that free of charge. And I see there might be a possibility that we'll partner with TT Mag. There might be another session with this soon. But the point I want to make, getting back to Karen's question, do we really know what we don't know? Back to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Dev, and I'm gonna hand over to Dev. Devanand.
Yeah. Okay. Great question, Karen. I think, well, it's possibly two things really. I would say that what stops it. There's a lot of information indeed on YouTube, about how to do things. The thing is that it's really custom, it's really geared for the audience, whoever has posted that YouTube video or whatever. So it works so whatever the information applies, okay, works great if you're a US citizen. But what if you're but you're here in Trinidad and Tobago? Those options you see, like say for digital marketing, say, where you say, oh, you can do lots of things, but that really applies when you're in the US. But then that's where the confusion lies in terms of, well, how do I relate that to the local situation here? How can I do digital marketing that they say that I can do in the States to the local level here? The other thing is probably a simpler thing, which is probably getting easier, but it's still a hassle, is the ability to just send and receive money online. It's just been the frustrating thing of, well, what's the point of me putting out something if I can't receive any payment for it? For example, we used to have well, we still do. We have a free and open source software collection for Windows, and we had put the ISO up online when it was both a CD and a DVD and so on and so on. And people took it and sold it on eBay and so forth. And it was like, but literally at the time, there was no way I could monetize it. There was no way I could say, hey, please send me something, So I think that's the problem. And yes, I know now that WePay is coming up and other payment systems. But as I said in the chat, PayPal is still a challenge. Banks are in fact rejecting PayPal transactions outright. So every time you have to call and approve each transaction, it has to decline first. And then you got to call and talk to somebody, and then they say try in 10 minutes, and then you can put it through again. So, so that's my 2 cents.
I think,
Karen, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. What Dev just said, and I kind of want to touch on what Suzanne was asking in the chat before, was that one of the biggest challenges since I moved here for me to be able to build an online business was the lack of knowledge in the public space. So everything I learned about WePay, everything I learned about PayPal, which banks PayPal connects to, Dev, I actually don't have a problem receiving any money from PayPal, nothing declines or anything. But even to learn all of that and to be able to build online and do digital marketing and do anything here, I've had to learn about it offline. I've had to network on LinkedIn, network behind the scenes, and actually sit down with people and learn to be able to construct everything that I'm doing, which is what has fueled my own platform. So KarenRose.com, my Digipreneur Academy, Digital Age, the web series, everything is about educating online business, but specifically for the Caribbean perspective. And even in doing that, I've also learned that, what works in Trinidad doesn't work in Jamaica. Jamaica has different challenges due to their own infrastructure. I've had to kind of learn that too. Same thing, it works a little bit differently in St. Lucia. So even within the Caribbean, we're still siloed by country because the infrastructure is a bit different in every country. The biggest challenge really has been that lack of education. if more businesses, if more stakeholders, if more institutions started to put out information on how to use their services, how they work, how they connect, it makes it so much easier for somebody who is just coming into the country, where I didn't grow up here. Everybody I know I've met through business circles and coming onto forums like this. But it makes it easier for me to just jump on Google and say, how do I receive money from Japan and Trinidad, and then getting an article showcasing to me, exactly, what tools to use and how to go about doing it. But the lack of knowledge in the public space and the lack of willingness to share the information and put it out publicly, because people will share knowledge offline to certain people, but we don't have people typically willing to share knowledge in a public space online that you can Google and make it so that it is relevant to our specific market here in the Caribbean. That has to change in order for us to move forward. In order for, again, in order for people that do say, they wanna be able to start online, they can, and they actually have a bit of guidance as to where to get started.
Did anybody else want to contribute? I think Aj, you were trying to get in. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just making some notes so I don't forget my thoughts, but just to complement what Karen is saying, in my experience, there's a lack of knowledge and there's a lack of depth of knowledge. So if we take the example of what Dev T just mentioned about digital marketing. Now, there's a lot of people that claim that they can do digital marketing, and what tends to happen is that they will know one part of digital marketing pretty strong, but then they won't, and the rest, they will just do the minimal they can, just to claim that they can provide you with the whole solution. And one of the problems you have is that these ecosystems, and let's just take the digital marketing ecosystem, is quite a vast ecosystem. And I'm just going to throw out some buzzwords just to give you an appreciation of what digital marketing can involve. You've got applications like ClickFunnels, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, and there's about 12, 13 of these that are focused on digital marketing. You've got email marketing, you've got cold emails, you need to worry about bounces, spam filters, you need to look at what you're going to use for emailing. It could be MailChimp, SendGrid. You need to think about SEOs, keywords, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. And one of the issues that I found is that, one, because you can't get a single person that will know everything on digital marketing, also it's difficult to find, let's say, 5 or 6 different people that can provide you with a complete solution. So when people get to this and they look at this, they very quickly discover that there's a lot of information out there. A lot of these systems have evolved over time. They've got a lot of features, a lot of functionality, and it could take a long time for them to master and fully understand a lot of these tools. And because there aren't any other people that, let's say, specialize in different aspects of digital marketing, a client, when they come to you, they will say, look, I want digital marketing, and they will expect you to do everything. And it's difficult for one person to be able to master everything. Whereas when you look at, let's say, outside of the country, you'll find companies that specialize in specific areas. So somebody will say, look, we will just do the emailing and emailing alone. Somebody will say, look, we will just create the artwork for the actual email. Somebody say, look, we'll do the tracking. We'll allow you to do that A/B testing. So there's a lot of depth, and the ecosystem needs to be developed. You can do certain things to act as catalysts, but there's a balance between time and just natural maturity of the ecosystem. So to answer the initial question from Karen, I think it's just that once people get into it, they could also be getting inundated with the amount of information and not knowing or finding it hard to decipher of what is relevant and what's not relevant.
Yeah, that's some sound some sound logic there, Ash. I think that you know, as a country and as a region, we really do need to to focus in. Karen actually raised an interesting point on that we like to niche, we'd like to generalize and not niche in our thinking. And that is something I've been seeing. I agree. It's been sort of happening without us realizing it. The word generalist becomes more useful than specialist. And that's a very odd kind of thing I'm starting to see happen. So you're basically a master of nothing. And what tends to happen in that scenario is that you may not be as valuable as you can be, because if you have a specialty in one area, I've been looking at content coming out of Jamaica as an example. Of course, even Trinidadian content. And there's some really interesting cooking shows, quite literally. There's somebody called Debbie Down Day or something like that. The Jamaican Cooking Journey, I think it's called. Very down home, very rootsy cooking show on YouTube that, I mean, I don't want to cast any aspersion, just a regular person that you'll see in a home in Jamaica doing a show, speaking I saw somebody talk about accents and in the chat just now. That kind of content is really specialized content that is appealing to many people. The amount of views she generates, she seems to be doing well with her merch. She seems to be doing well with her views on YouTube and maybe even getting to monetize what she's doing on YouTube and doing well enough. Those are the kind of things that we don't seem to want to do in the region. We want to get very general and very, broad and digital marketing and stuff like that. And I know we talked about it in the earlier session about, who do you go to for these things, at the end of the day. It's a good question. The local content question is very important. And again, that's when everybody's just touched on it. What do we do as a region, as a country, to focus ourselves on these areas that would be appealing and valuable, not just our local audience in terms of within our countries, but also outside of our countries. So one to the diaspora, which is a natural audience, but also to those who are seeking content that is not necessarily their content. You see in the real world, let's use the real world, a lot of Japanese and Asians coming to experience Transvaal Carnival face to face, play pan. Maybe not even play mass, but certainly record and document the masquerade, the prayer of the bands or the clips of competition and so on. And that kind of content seems to be doing very well in their country. But we don't seem to appreciate that ourselves outside of the carnival period and so on. So what do we need to do to really get ourselves in that headspace in terms of niching down and focusing on what we need to focus on? As Dev G said, we don't know what we don't know, right? So what do we need to do? Time has run out on us, unfortunately, so I'm kind of leaving that question open. There's a lot of great stuff in the chat. Please do take a look at it. And I'm going to leave the discussion open for final thoughts and comments for anyone who wants to jump in. Dev G, your hand is still up. I'm not sure if you want to say anything. And maybe if no one else is going to jump in, any of the other TT-Mark members wants to leave any final words as we wrap up our open forum, or certainly anyone else who wants to jump in. But, I guess we want no more new topics, but certainly final comments. Anyone wants to jump in and say anything now?
Well, this is Dave. Just to say that I think these 2 days of sessions have been very fruitful, and so I think it has come out better than we expected. We always had this concern about whether a virtual event would work and well, not just work, but be effective, and I think it has. So that's.
I would just like to put someone on the spot. I see my brother in row 3 is here, Albert Daniels. So, and I think he just evaporated. Oh my, I was going to put him on the spot. All right, you go ahead and back, Tracy.
I'm here, Dev. I'm here.
Oh, very good, very good. I didn't see the lovely picture. Go ahead, Albert.
Well,
you don't have to do this, right?
I know where you're going, but go ahead.
You go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, just from an ICANN perspective to say congratulations to the TT Mag team, as well as your administrative and back office staff. I think the event as a partner, we consider it was successful, good participation, good topics discussed. And we look forward, as many of the persons in the chat have said, to seeing how we can arrive at tangible solutions to some of the things that we've been talking about. Of course, we've seen a lot of ICANN stakeholders participate, and as usual, that is very good to see. We're happy about that, and hopefully we'll get some new ones. So congratulations.
Thanks, and I guess I think I would leave it now to our chair to do a final intervention and wrap up. Ash, would you like to take the floor and give some final thoughts?
Okay, sure, yeah. So just to reiterate what Dev T said, it was our first online event. We've considered it in the past, and I think it's been successful. We had great participation in the chat rooms. Thank you everyone that attended and made it possible. I know there's been a lot of hard work that's gone in by the directors, and then not to get our event coordinator, Denise. So once again, thank you, Denise, for making us look good. Albert, it's always a pleasure to see you. Normally at the end of these events, we normally go for drinks somewhere in Trinidad, but we'll have to save that hopefully for next year if things are well. Yeah, just to reiterate to everyone that TT Mag is here, mag.tt, or email us, reach out to us, participate, and help us to move this space forward. We're looking for people to replace us as we, get old in about 20, 30 years. So thank you for everyone for participating, and there'll be the videos, we'll do the wrap-ups, there'll be some reports, so they'll be available on our websites. For those of you that we have an email address for, we will be sending you out emails and keeping you updated. And then during the course of the year, as other events take place and other conferences, we'll keep you in touch and invite you guys to join us again. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, everyone, and do enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are. Devji, Canvule.
Most certainly. Just see the wood, and I'll make a phone call.
Right. Thanks again for everyone, and thank you all for your participation, and thanks to Director TT Mag, and let's keep our spirits up, and let's hope we see each other virtually and certainly face to face in the very near future. I do hope that this is something that will happen very shortly. Bye all, and let's do the Zoom bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.